Linda Sousa here with Joy in the Journey and lindasousa.com, and I'm going to be making some butternut squash macaroni and cheese. Beachbody actually has a recipe for butternut squash mac and cheese, which is really awesome. And then I had also found one, actually my husband had found it and told me about it, and then we looked it up. It was from the Chew, and I guess they're calling it lightened up squash mac and cheese. So you can use, there's so many recipes out there, and then you can add your own flair. And that's what I do. I like to just kind of take something, use it as a base, and then make it my own. So I'm doing a little bit of a combination between them. The Beachbody recipe uses also some onion and some red pepper, and I'm not crazy about that with my mac and cheese, so I like to keep it a little simpler. And so I'm doing it more based on the lighten up, but incorporating some of the Beachbody to make it a little bit healthier than it is, or than it would be, I guess, if you were just making straight up mac and cheese. So what am I doing? I'm using some chicken stock. You can use organic, low sodium chicken stock. I didn't have any of that in the house. I just had some basic chicken stock, so I'm using that. I think they recommend using 1% milk. We don't usually buy milk at all, but I was making recipes last weekend for a party that we were having, so I purchased, and when I usually do, I purchase milk, it's 2%. So that's what I used, or that's what I'm using. And you use Greek yogurt in this. It makes it nice and creamy, and this is my favorite Greek yogurt, so that's what I'm using. I think on the Chew recipe they use cavatappi. You can use any kind of pasta that you want, the little corkscrews or the elbows. I'm going to be using, or you can use gluten-free. You can use regular pasta if you want to do that, whole wheat. I'm using the super grain pasta, which is organic corn and quinoa blend. It's the elbows. So that's the pasta that I'm going to be using for this particular mac and cheese. And then butternut squash. Sometimes I'll buy the whole thing and I'll peel it and cut it. This time I bought it. It was already peeled and cut in half. So it was hollowed out. All the insides were taken out, and it just had the butternut squash. So I cut it up. This calls, I believe, for 1.5 cups. This is more like 2 cups. I'm not worried about the measurements. It's just, again, I cook by touch, taste, feel, smell, and I don't always follow a recipe to the T. So they're calling, I think, in here for 1.5 cups. This is probably closer to 2 cups, all cut up. And I'm using Gruyere cheese, and I'm also using a New York white sharp cheddar cheese. There's a combination of different cheeses they call here. Again, go with your taste. Go with what you like. The one for the Chew uses Gruyere cheese and also Parmesan. The one for the Beachbody goes with these two, which is the Gruyere and the cheddar. So that's what I'm going with. And what else? I think I've covered most of the ingredients. So what did I do? So what I've done so far is and again, this is it's saying, I believe, I'm going more by the Beachbody one. So I'll give you those measurements. You can always go on to beachbody.com, look for the recipe. It's called butternut squash mac and cheese. If you're in a challenge group, an accountability group, odds are that someone in that group is sharing that recipe. I share it in mine all the time. And I also have a free group called Journey with Joy to Good Health on Facebook, and I often share this on that page as well. So you can find it, just Google it out there. But for the recipe here, it says, let's see, 1 3/4 cup low sodium organic chicken broth, and it's recommending 1 cup of low fat or 1% milk. So what I have in my stock pot here is what amounts to almost 2 cups. Why? Of organic broth, because I had a cup and 3/4, and there was just a little left, and this is almost done. I'm not putting it back in the fridge. So I just put it in there. And then I used a little less than a cup of milk because I kind of wanted to balance out that liquid. But I'm not fussy about it. And then I have, like I said, these 2 cups of butternut squash. Love butternut squash. So I put that in there, and now I'm going to cook this, and I'm going to cook it until this actually the squash gets nice and tender and breaks down. And so I'm going to put that back there for a second. I'll turn that on in a minute. So I have that going. I also have my water going to put in my my quinoa elbows. I'm probably making more. It says, I believe, 1 pound of dry whole wheat macaroni. So I'm using a little more. And I'll be cooking that because I might actually take some of that out, reserve it, and make something else with it. So I've already shredded my cheeses. Those are ready and good to go. This is more than the cup that it recommends. And so I'll be putting some of this away when I add it to the recipe. I'll be measuring that out probably by hand, but I can eyeball or I can use my little measuring cups here. So I'll be back in a minute, and once that is all boiled up, and I'll show you how we get to the next step on making butternut squash macaroni and cheese. So we're getting ready now to put stuff together. So what I've done here is I've cooked down that milk with the chicken stock and the butternut squash. And actually, I forgot to mention one of the recipes calls for 2 cloves of garlic. So I put 2 cloves of garlic in there. This is so incredibly fragrant. It smells wonderful. It smells so rich and decadent. So there's my mixture, and you really need to be very, very careful with this because it is very hot. I'm going to actually take this off of here and bring it down a little closer so it's easier to work with. And I'm going to grab another spoon back here. My butternut squash is, and this is kind of hot, so let me put that there. I just don't want to lose any, so I'm going to try to put that against there. There we go. My butternut squash is nice and tender, which is really what I wanted. And so I'm going to put it in here. Just have to be very careful. See that nice, I don't know if you can see it, that clove of garlic, or part of the clove of garlic. It's all just breaking down beautifully. But you have to be really careful when you're mixing up hot liquids. Make sure, especially that you're putting the cover on well, and that you're not like on top of it, because the last thing you want is for that to come right back up in your face. That would not be a good thing. So, and here's more of that nice garlic. It's going to give it such delicious flavor. Look at that. So now I'm actually going to just pour the rest of this hot liquid. This pan is still too hot for me to handle. I suppose I ought to put these on, right? I have a tendency to take shortcuts, and I probably shouldn't do that. So now I'm going to pour this all right in there. There we go. Get the last wonderful drop. Set that out of the way. And now, put that in. Didn't need to use that. I'm just going to put it to the side. Want to make sure that I get my top on here. Everything's nice and sealed. It's down. I like to hold on to the top of it. It's going to make some noise here. So I'm going to puree. Turn this on. Mix that all at once. Oh, it's looking beautiful. More. I'm going to be adding stuff as we go along. So I'm going to release that, open that up, and actually it creates a little suction, so I want to get that off the top. Oh my goodness. Let's see. That looks really awesome. Now I'm going to add my Greek yogurt. And it says 2 tablespoons. Well, that's kind of a heaping one, right? And another one there. There we go. I'm just going to put the rest of that in there. Get all that goodness. I'm going to mix this up again. Again, I want to be very careful to make sure I have everything all nicely closed, secured, and sealed down before I start this. And I'm mixing that in. That Greek yogurt is going to give it such a nice richness. We're almost ready to put this all together. So now I'm going to add, and I want to let go of that to let the suction go easy. We're going to add the cheese and then mix that cheese up in there. So we have some sharp white cheddar and some Gruyere cheese. And the recipe calls for a cup of each. So it is a hot, humid day here in the Northeast. And that's actually going to be pretty much 1 cup. So, I mean, I can cram it all in there. There we go. So that's 1 cup of the cheddar. So that's done. And I'm going to mix that first before I add the Gruyere. And all of that is not going in there because that is too much. So let's try this again. Let's mix this puppy up. Make sure that's down. That cheese is just going to melt in there. Now you could instead of the cheddar, you could add Parmigiano Reggiano. You can add whatever you like. I've actually done this and I've put in Pecorino Romano, which is one of my favorites. I've done a little combination of the two, of Parmesan and some Pecorino. That Pecorino gives it such a nice saltiness. But I'm going more by the recommended cheeses that are in the 21-day fix version of this butternut squash mac and cheese. Yes, and I'm just packing this right in here. Getting all that velvety, cheesy goodness. Actually, ooh, I can get that right in. Is that much more? I was going to put that in the fridge, but I'm thinking I may just put that right in there. Because I have a little extra liquid, I'm going to do that. Yes, I know. I don't go by the measurements. I should. And I do when I'm measuring out my containers. But when I'm cooking, I have a tendency to just go by what feels good, and I don't want to waste. So I end up putting a little bit in. As long as I'm watching what my portions are when I'm eating it, then I feel good. And it works. It's been working for me. So we're mixing this up. Those. All that cheesy goodness has been mixed up into the butternut squash mixture. So that's all done and good to go. This is my quinoa pasta, and I cooked it, and I used 2 packages. So this is gluten-free, and now I want to mix the 2. So here we go. I'm going to put, actually, I'm going to pour that in first. And I'm not doing it in that because I want to pour it into that. So be really careful with this hot liquid. If you have a blender like I do, be very careful with the, that the blade doesn't come flying out. There we go. That is a lot of liquid, probably way too much for what I have. So we're going to see how that flushes out. I maybe should have reserved some of that. And in fact, I think I might before it's too late, because I can always save that for something else and add some back in. There we go. Let's see how that works. That looks good. It's always easier to add more in than it is to take it out. And I want my wooden spoon for this. So I washed, I actually rinsed the pasta in a little bit of cold water to stop the cooking. And then made sure that I drained it. So this actually looks fabulous. Look at that. Can you see it? rich and decadent macaroni and cheese made with butternut squash. Now the recipe from the Chew recommends panko crumbs, sauteing a little bit of butter with a little bit of the panko to crisp them up a bit and put them over the top. I actually sometimes have gluten-free breadcrumbs on hand, and I might put a little bit of that over the top, or I may just not put anything, maybe a little bit of parsley or something, or just nothing at all. This is ready now to get loaded into my pan, which right here I have sprayed. Let me remove this since that has some stuff on it, and I want you to be able to see it. Olive oil is in here. You can use coconut oil if you want. I didn't want the coconut flavor with this, so I chose to go with the olive oil. You could use butter. I don't use butter. But you want to definitely grease your pan. You know, cooking spray, you can use those cooking sprays. I am not particular to them. I don't really like them, so I prefer to use olive oil in one of these little handy pumps. And then you spray. Well, there it goes. So I got the corners. I wanted to make sure I got the corners in there because this is going to go in the oven and bake. So now pour this right in here. And I could add a little more of the liquid because this kind of soaked it up. It's not as soupy, and I don't want it to be too dry. I probably should have added the liquid while it was in there. I did not do that, but I have it right here, and I'm actually going to pull this out. Let's just put that in there. And I'm going to add a little more. Ooh, look at that. My, it looks wonderful, doesn't it? Oh, that just looks fabulous. Now, there's really, other than in the water that I used to cook the pasta, there isn't much in the way of, I want to put this down so I can put it on my cutting board. There really isn't much salt in this. I'm going to add a little bit of, let's see if I can find it, my Himalayan sea salt, and where's my, trying to find my crushed black pepper or my coarsely ground, here it is, coarsely ground black pepper. That's what I'm going to add to the top of this. I'm not doing any panko. Just a touch of coarsely ground black pepper and a touch of Himalayan sea salt. This has like a little, there. That looks fabulous. This is my butternut macaroni and cheese. It's going to go into the oven. Again, I have to look at that to tell you what it's going to do because I just put it in, look, when it's done, I take it out and I'm good to go. But I know everybody's always looking for times and what the how long it has to go in. So the oven actually has been preheating. It's actually at 400 degrees. This should actually be preheating to 375. I have a pork butt in there that's got a bunch of Cajun rub spice all over it to make pulled pork. So that's in there. I'm going to lower that to 375, and I'm going to bake it for 25 to 30 minutes or until the sauce is bubbly. And then for this one it says garnish with parsley if desired. So I may actually put a little bit of parsley on that, but that is going to be my mac and cheese, my butternut squash mac and cheese. Simple, easy, healthy. This will make a great lunch during the course of the week for my meal prep. I've got a lot of other things that I'm doing this weekend. We had the benefit of having the day off yesterday, so we went and, were able to go out and do a few things, run some errands, have some fun in between, and then also do our grocery shopping. And typically I shop for a week to 2 weeks, getting a lot of the things that we need. I used to prep a lot of food in advance and have everything all ready. I tend to like to cook things in bulk, something like this, and then make my lunches as I go, because I don't know what I'm going to feel like having. So I tend to do that more than I do prepping actual meals ahead of time, but I do that too, especially if we have leftovers. Then I'll prep a meal or two for John and I for the next day. I do prep in advance a lot of my snacks. I do the overnight oats, I'll do salads, I will do the yogurt, and I like to make my own fruit blends with the yogurt. I take the fresh fruit and mix it in and hand blend it into the yogurt, and then put it in the fridge overnight so that it kind of sets a little, and it's just like those where you pop off the top at the grocery store with a yogurt with fruit in it, and it's all nice and yummy. Well, I do the same thing, except I make it myself. I prefer it that way. There's no added sugars or anything else other than the sugar that comes from the fruit. And I know it's fresh. I know exactly what's in it because I put it in there. So I tend to make those things in advance, but meals I'll tend to make them in bulk, make chickens and do those sort of things, and then mix and make my meals. But you can do whatever is to your liking. So I do have a few other things that I'll be doing today. I may do some videos on it, I may not. But in any event, this is the mac and cheese. Enjoy. So this is the finished product of the baked butternut squash macaroni and cheese. You know how I had that little extra bit of liquid butternut, cheesy, velvety, creamy liquid left over in the blender? Well, I actually ended up pouring it on top of this, mixing it in a little bit before I put it in the oven to bake. And this has been baking now for about 25 minutes, and it is all done. So it actually did take all of that liquid, and it was bubbling and just looking fabulous. I didn't put any breadcrumbs, you know, because you could use like gluten-free breadcrumbs on top, or some panko, or you could put some parsley, or you know, a little dusting of cheese if you wanted to, but I wouldn't recommend that. But you could put that on top, but I didn't. I just left it plain, mixed it up, a little bit of coarse ground black pepper and a little bit of Himalayan sea salt, and then I baked it, and that is the yummy goodness of this macaroni and cheese. So I think I hadn't planned on doing this, but since you're here, since we're together, I will actually show you what it looks like. I'm not ready to have lunch. I'm not ready to make anything yet, or do anything, but let's see if I can find a little spatula. Whoops. And I hadn't planned on doing this when I started. That's the beauty of video, right? Just do whatever you want to do when you want to do it. It's still kind of hot. Let's see. So I'm going to go ahead and just a little chunk of that out. Oh my goodness, look at that. It looks yummy. Ooh, and it's just going to fall apart. Oh my, I don't know if you can, well, obviously you can't smell it. You can see it, certainly. Let's not leave those in there. Just don't want to lose any of that goodness. And I think my spoon has kind of gotten a little messed up here. And this is the finished product. So the taste, the proof is in the tasting, right? So we'll taste it. Hot. It is so creamy, and it feels so decadent. You can really taste the that Gruyere and the cheddar cheese. So it's nice and cheesy and velvety smooth. The quinoa elbow pasta here, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference really between this and regular pasta. Well, actually, not true. I would, and I do, because I'm Italian and I make my own pasta. And there is a difference, but this is delicious, and I love it, and I enjoy it, and it's healthy. And when I want to indulge, then I can make my own pasta, and I can indulge in that way. But if I want to have a decadent delicious, comforting, home-cooked meal during the course of the week, I can turn to something like this and not derail my my progress where my food plan is concerned. And it's delicious. It's you know, it's creamy, it's yummy. It's that got that taste and feel of that comfort food. And so this is the butternut squash, and you definitely can taste the butternut squash. This is not like, oh, I'm gonna fool you and, you know, make a mac and cheese and you're not gonna taste it. I definitely taste it. I also taste it because I used probably an extra half a cup of butternut squash over the recipe. The recipe said to use 1.5 cups, and I used almost 2 cups of butternut squash. I used 2 of those, literally 1 whole butternut squash to make this. So I definitely get the flavor and the taste of it, but I like it. It's delicious. And so here it is, mac and cheese, butternut squash style. Enjoy. Yeah, that's really good.